Welcome back. Time to take a closer look now at the recent history of the Philippines. The late Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos' reign was marred by a series of scandals. In 1986, he was removed from power by a show of people power revolution that after it was revealed he had invested hundreds of millions of dollars in the United States. Well, the Philippines ranked 121st in the Corruption Perception Index of 2006. That's an index issued by Transparency International organization. But corruption runs rampant in a number of other countries in the neighborhood, including Bangladesh, where former Prime Minister Khalida Zia was detained earlier this month. She faces charges of extortion and corruption. Well, Bangladesh ranked 156th in the Corruption Perception Index of 2006. In Indonesia, Suharto, the second president of Indonesia, was marred by corrupt practices and allegations. Of course, he was forced to step down from his position as president in May 1998 following mass demonstrations. While Indonesia ranked 130 in the Corruption Perception Index of 2006. Well, joining us again are our guests from Berlin, Cobus de Swart, Managing Director of Transparency International. From Manila in the Philippines, Roland Simbulan, Professor of Development Studies at the University of the Philippines and a Senior Fellow at the Center for People Empowerment and Governance. And on the line from Manila, Senator Francis Escudero, member of the Philippine Senate and Secretary General of the United Opposition. Thanks you all for being with us. If I could start with Senator Francis once again. The fact that demonstrations have been so far limited, they haven't been violent, is it a sign that the poor perhaps have no faith in the system anymore?
Not necessarily. I don't think there's a direct correlation between the two, if at all. But to reply perhaps to your query before the break, did it help us in any way? It would be nice to ask our other guests from Transparency International. Did the ranking of the Philippines improve from the time of former President Estrada in 2001 to the time of President Arroyo in 2006? Because to my mind, Sami, if there is one thing that the Arroyo administration should have been able to do and or accomplish, that should be address the issue of corruption, because it precisely used the issue of corruption in order to wrest control of power against Estrada in 2001. Unfortunately, instead of improving the quality of life of our people, instead of solving and or curbing, if only one issue, which is corruption in our country, the Arroyo administration sadly failed to do that for all of us.
All right, interesting point. Sorry to interrupt you, Senator. Interesting point you make there, though. Let's put that point to Transparency International. Cobus, would you like to answer that? Have corruption charges been used only to increase corruption?
No, I think that would be wrong to say that. Surely one has to be realistic that the charging of a limited number of high-level politicians does not change the whole corruption dynamic. It is one important part of a process, but corruption and benefits to the poor do not necessarily flow just because some public officials are prosecuted. What is very important to realize is that not only in the Philippines, but in the region and even beyond the region, our own research shows year after year that political parties are seen by at least 2/3 of countries around the world as the most corrupt institution in those countries. This undermines the faith of the people in governance, and that is the problem that we're facing. And one should be very careful not to say that people have lost faith in a justice system if the root cause here is clearly a breakdown in faith of people, including in the Philippines, in the political processes. More importantly, the benefits of tackling corruption will, in the long term, be essential to flow down to the poor, and for that reason, the prosecution of a particular political regime has to be accompanied with new political regimes enforcing reforms that make it possible for the public at large to hold them accountable in terms of how they spend public funding.
Right. Let's go over to Professor Roland once again. Some demonstrators have already been saying that they're regarding this as another example, another indication of the president having little regard for the poor of the country. How wide a sentiment do you think that will be in the Philippines?
Well, first of all, I think it is not proper to compare or make comparisons between the acts committed by the former President Estrada and the current incumbent president, because there are those who are arguing that the corruption now under the present Arroyo administration is even worse. So why are we condemning or persecuting the former president? I think that's a separate matter, and any public official.
Do you think nobody, though, is linking
Marcos,
those two issues in
Estrada,
their minds in the Philippines?
Yes, I have seen I've read the reactions of some people who are saying that this present administration is even more corrupt now, and there are more scandals going on. So that how come these scandals are not being acted upon? No, but I think we will come to that. And talking about accountability, I think the key here, from our perspective, is the awareness and mobilization of citizens, groups, and organizations in making their officials accountable for their actions. I think this is important. In fact, this is what triggered in the first place the EDSA 2, the people power process that impeached President Estrada in the first place.
All right.
So that it will be his case will be tried by the proper courts.
All right, try and broaden it out once again. Let's bring Senator Francis on the line. Some often offer democracy as a solution to corruption. That hasn't always been the experience of Asian countries, even in the Philippines in particular, has it?
Not necessarily, Sami, because our democracy is yet in its infancy. In our learning curve insofar as perfecting our system and making sure that indeed the vote of one person is always counted in any election is not just as yet, not yet there. But having said that, Sami, the question we are answering is, did this conviction send the correct signal not only to future administrations but the present administration as well? It's not so much comparing the level of corruption between the past administration and this administration. And in regard to what our other two guests said, the point I was driving at was this. Did we improve because a case was filed against a former president and that he was convicted? Did, by Transparency International standards, did we improve from where we were in 2001 and their latest survey in 2006? And number two, are we sending the correct signal insofar as present leaders are concerned? If we will address it, if we will address this issue at some point in time, as Professor Simbulan points out, my question is, when? Shouldn't we act on it now while it's happening right before our eyes?
All right, well, we've got a little time left. Sorry to interrupt you. We've got a little time left in the programme. Let's go over to Cobus and ask him to answer those 2 points you've raised repeatedly in the show. Your response, Cobus?
Well, I want to stress that the point that was made in terms of democracy. Whilst democracy is important, it is particularly accountability to the people at large that is lacking in many countries in the region. And without that accountability that enable the public at large to hold politicians accountable, the situation neither in the Philippines nor in other countries will improve rapidly.
Right,
that is an absolute necessity.
Right, well, I'm afraid we are running out of time. We'll have to leave the discussion there and thank our guests, Cobus de Swart from Transparency International, Roland Simbulan from the Center for People Empowerment, and Senator Francis Escudero from the Philippine Senate. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, the viewer, so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. Email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. For now, it's goodbye.